Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is Dr. Alison J. Dr. Alison is an experienced public speaker with more than 25 years of experience as a mind-body energy leader and healer, founding the Vibrational Upgrade System and working in yoga, meditation, energy medicine, mind-body fitness, longevity, and holistic health. Her third book was a #1 international bestseller, Reasonable Dragons. Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, Dr. Alison.
Hi. Happy to be here.
Well, first off, why do you do what you do?
Well, I didn't really see how I could choose something different. I'm naturally able to do this work and it helps people. And so why would I not do it?
That's fair enough. Yeah. Now, what motivates you? I guess that's really the question. What motivates you to do what you do?
So when I moved to Asia, I had a master's with very little, but still student loans to pay back. And I just wanted basic housing, food that was organic, a massage a week, and basic transportation. And I was on my teacher's salary and it wasn't happening. And so I also was not okay with feeling like in my early 30s, I was in this closet for the rest of my life. I knew, because I'd already traveled and lived internationally, that I was meant to have adventure and fun and not live like in this pre-planned decades worth of life ahead of me. So I started looking around to see what else was possible and found that there's an international school system. I got interviews and job offers around the world and went to Asia because on the side of my teaching career, I was learning and how to be able to facilitate energy medicine and wellness sessions for people. I had already been teaching meditation. I had my first career in politics and I was quite successful and it was stressful. And so I picked up a book on how to meditate. And from there it was all a natural fit. So as I was running these wellness sessions alongside my classroom teaching career, I moved over to Asia because I knew that the Chinese were the ones who, and the Indians were the ones who understood energy. If I was going to understand consciousness and energy and be able to get more robust results for my clients, that was how to do it. Plus, I also realized that the machine wasn't ready to change globally yet, looking at it from an environmental conservation perspective and switching from non-renewable resources to renewable resources. So I said, okay, if change is going to happen, one consciousness or one person at a time, reaching that 100th monkey theory was how to do it. So that's why I began to work with consciousness of individuals. So what motivates me is that change, is that understanding. When I came back after living in Asia for a decade, when I came back here, my first book, What If There's Nothing Wrong, I wrote my 10th year over there while getting my PhD in communicating what I've seen from living over there for a decade and studying holistic health and wellness and the way energy flows in the body and meditation and working internally rather than external focus, which is what we do over here more so in the West. And I realized that we have the plethora of suffering we have in the West comparatively, not to say it's ideal or utopia over in the East, but because we run from paying attention to our thoughts, we run from our minds, we use our intellect to help us make money, have targets and goals, and strategize and quote unquote figure stuff out. But there is so much other potential within us as humans. When we work with our subtle energy, that's what we call it. That's what I say I'm an expert in, is subtle energy. When we understand our consciousness, when we understand what we're doing when we think a certain way, what that's doing to create things in our lives, when we extrapolate that and do some of the stuff I do, for example, helping people have more success rather than fighting so hard when they hit a brick wall, pushing another way or pushing through it. Instead, helping their consciousness be more geared towards easy solutions or something that's a more organic, natural way for them to go about reaching a goal rather than everything approached from the intellect and the mind and what it deduces as this is what is needed. there's so much more freedom and there's so much more potential that can be reached. And we're just so shut off in the West comparative to what we could be feeling and reaching for and experiencing. And COVID-19, this wonderful year of 2020, has been what I would say is, what others say is, if you take Ed between 2012 and 2032, it's a 20-year window, which many major cultures for eons have predicted that this is going to be something remarkable, starting on 2012. And it's considered humanity's greatest evolutionary leap. My second book, I wrote about this more so than my third book. And stuff's getting shaken up. And the material is meant to be balancing with the spiritual. The internal is meant to be balancing with the external, and the masculine is meant to be balancing with the feminine. So when we approach like our business with this real yang energy or active energy, like the sun is yang, the moon is yin. So taking steps, action steps, calling somebody, launching a new product, launching a new revenue stream, all of that is considered yang. But the ignoring of the internal, like the intuitive understanding of, wow, this would really do well. Wow, I'm really excited about this, and paying attention to what gives us joy and actually implementing that, and sometimes ignoring the mind and its preferred tendencies to go down that well-trodden path or technique or strategy, and instead do that something new because of that excitement and enthusiasm perceived in the heart, or lightness. That's actually information within our system that's telling us, go this way. And when we don't have any sense of tuning into our internal consciousness or working with it, and we just live from the mind and the surface, that's not balanced with the yin and yang. So yin is considered like you give birth as a woman. So you seed the fetus. That seeding is like seeding an idea. So there's inner work that wants to get done before we just approach life all on the surface of life. There's a combination that makes life actually easier.
And specifically, I wanted you to address a little bit about stress reduction and for wellness for entrepreneurs.
So if you were to look at the expectations you place on yourself, now I'm a business owner, I have a staff of about 10, six-figure income. I help others build their own revenue streams, training and certifying them in Vibrational Upgrade System, which is a combination of mindfulness and energy medicine to get the quickest changes and the quickest results, but with permanent behavioral change. I'm also a certified personal trainer. I also have specialty certification as a behavioral change specialist. This isn't anything at all to do with woo-woo. Instead, it's about moving beyond that judgment or ignorance even of what does the invisible have to add to life for me. And it's almost like what causes, I think, such primary stress is the sense that in the West, we're not. So let me back up. When I lived in Asia, whether I was traveling during Chinese New Year to Thailand, and I was seeing monks in the subway, having a cell phone in one hand, in their monk garb, in their robes, and a cigarette in the other hand, or I was in Taiwan where I taught and lived throughout the school year as an administrator, and I taught AP Psych. So there's Western steeped training in my background. It's not all from the East. I would see monks in gray robes there going on their scooters to the morning market to pick up their fresh veggies. And what that symbolized for me is seeing like the monks everywhere and the Buddha statues everywhere in the monasteries that I would visit and go interact with the monks and ask questions and chant with them. And when I was in India, all the temples you see, it's this understanding of all that you can get from working within. Like, don't run from your mind. If I'm upset about something that's going on out there that you did, that's my work more than it is me blaming you and yelling at you and pointing my fingers at you. So there's this constant subliminal under the radar kind of reminder over there to work with yourself, that you're responsible for your own self-management. And I found that when applied to stress reduction, if you're driving in traffic and you're next to somebody else driving in traffic, and this is what happened to me when I was still in the States teaching, and I had an hour commute in traffic in the morning, and then when I got done at night, it wasn't the traffic the same. So in the traffic, I used to give myself a treatment with my energy medicine. while I was sitting there. The person next to me would be pounding their steering wheel or racing in between lanes, trying to get around and do what they do when people are anxious and uptight in traffic. But the stress physiological response that then wears on our immune system, that then wears down our longevity, that then helps create chronic pain, all of those physiological, bodily, hormonal changes from stress is hindering upon our interpretation of a situation. So I didn't conclude inside my head, this is stressful for me, the traffic. Instead, I chose to use that for self-care time. Whereas the person next to me freaking out and weaving in between lanes had concluded, this is stressful. I need to get to my meeting on time. I can't sit in this traffic, all those thoughts. And then that induced the stress reaction. And then you know how that feels. It feeds on itself. It's a loop because it's a physiological reaction. So your mind, your consciousness is interacting with the bodily effects. It's called the mind-body connection. So the more that we can have a sense of ability to observe our thoughts, the more we'll be able to not have to listen to them. If there is a practice such as meditation that has existed for 5,000 years, and the premise is every human mind's a neurotic mind, here are the tools with how to work with your own flavor of neuroses. And the basic premise behind meditation is you do it so that you can quiet the mind and observe your thoughts. Then that implies we're not just our thoughts. So then if you extrapolate quite a few steps beyond that, if you can, when you're going about your day-to-day, ask, is that really true? When your mind concludes this thing sucks, or this thing's so hard, or this isn't working. And then ask, like, okay, so how does it get any better than this? What would improve this? So there's this interaction that can happen because we have this natural GPS interiorly to guide our lives. And there is what's called vital life force energy, or chi as in qigong, or tai chi, which I also teach, qigong, or yoga, that flow of energy. Why you feel better coming out of a yoga class is because those chakras are open from the poses. And there was more consciousness or life force flowing throughout your system. So you felt more alive and you had less blocking, heavy thoughts. Your thoughts were lighter, more energy was able to circulate. So you can access all of this life force that's in us and in trees and in the animals and all around us. That's actually inherently supportive for life to exist. We interpret it in English as vital life force energy. Whereas, in the ancient language of Chinese, it's one word, chi, it's one syllable. It's two syllables in Indian culture, the yogic tradition, prana, Reiki. Ki is a Japanese way of saying it. Ka is the Egyptian way of saying it. The Mayans used to have an understanding of the chakra system. So every ancient culture has this understanding and wisdom about the subtle energy system, and that it flows all around us, even on the earth. That's how we've ended up with like sacred spots around, power spots, like Sedona, Arizona, for example, or the pyramids in Egypt. So being able to come out of our small thinking mind, what's called the ego mind, is the first step. Questioning our thoughts, if they're even true, is the second step. And then learning how, and the specific techniques to do within our systems that I do day in and day out, and I teach my practitioners to do, to help your body, your consciousness connect with this more supportive, beautiful life force, so that it's much more of a dance and cohesion, internally listening, externally taking steps, organically guided. So it's a dance between the internal and the external, and life is so much easier.
And Dr. Alison, we have an exit question we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours and why are they a hero?
I don't really have a hero other than the divine. I'm just so grateful that my body breathes itself.
All right. Lastly, how can somebody contact you?
Go to vibrationalupgrade.com.
All right.
Reasonable Dragons on Amazon too. Reasonable Dragons on Amazon.
Okay. Dr. Alison J. Thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.
Cheers. Thank you.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.